They told Myra the school had been closed 4 years. And yet, there it stood, Blackridge School for Girls. Its iron gates twisted with thorny ivy, and windows glazed with the dust of time. Perched on the edge of a forgotten hill, just a mile outside the sleepy town of Denton Hollow, the building exhaled a kind of ancient breath, one that smelled of old paper, mildewed uniforms, and secrets sealed behind crumbling plaster. The morning fog was dense as Myra and her Aunt Eliza pulled up in a faded blue station wagon. The forest lining the road seemed to lean inward, branches low and whispering. Myra sat silent in the passenger seat, her hands tucked tightly into the sleeves of her sweater. "You don't have to go," Eliza said, her voice careful. Myra shook her head. "It's only for the semester. I'll be fine." But even she didn't believe that. Eliza sighed, watching the grey monolith of the school loom through the windshield. It wasn't on any list, no records, no website. "Are you sure this is the right place?" the letter said. Blackridge. "This is it." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a yellowed envelope, the kind that felt like it had been mailed a century ago. On the front, in swirling ink, was her full name. Miss Myra Hanley. Chosen Student School had sent it without return address, postmarked from nowhere. Inside had been a single type sheet. "Welcome to Blackridge School for Girls. You have been selected. Follow the decrees. Do not stray. Do not run. Obey the bells. Failure to comply will result in expulsion." There'd been no further explanation. They walked through the front doors, just as the old bell above the entrance rang out a low, brassy tone. Inside, the school was colder than it had any right to be. The air clung to Myra's skin, damp and heavy, as if trying to pull her backward. The halls were long and high-ceilinged, decorated with cracked portraits of headmistresses past. No students in sight, no teachers, only silence. Then came the sound of footsteps. A woman emerged from the shadows, tall, pale, with her white blonde hair pinned into a rigid bun. Her dress was outdated, a long navy uniform with brass buttons that caught the light in a dull gleam. "Miss Hanley," she said without smiling. "You're late." The letter didn't say a time. Blackridge always assumes promptness. "I am Headmistress Lorne." She extended a gloved hand, and Myra took it. The woman's skin was cold through the leather. Eliza lingered, clearly uneasy. "Are you sure it's safe here?" she whispered. Lorne turned to her. "Blackridge is not for the weak or uncertain. It is a place of discipline. We do not tolerate hesitation." Eliza frowned, but Myra was already being led away. As they walked down the main hall, Lorne spoke without turning her head. "You have arrived on an important day. Tonight, we welcome the term with the first decree." "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, pausing at a thick wooden door, "that you must listen, always." She opened the door. Inside was a dorm room with a single bed, a wardrobe, and a desk. The curtains were heavy velvet, drawn tight. Myra felt eyes on her, though the room was empty. On the bed sat a small slip of paper. Decree 1. Never open your curtains after dark. "Not even a sliver. These rules?" Myra asked. "They're serious." Lorne met her gaze, and for the first time, her expression shifted. "Fear. They are not rules, Miss Hanley. They are survival." That night, Myra lay in her new bed, the blanket scratchy against her skin. Outside, the wind began to rise. It howled like children screaming in the distance. The room was colder now, and the air seemed to hum. At 10 p.m., a bell rang 3 times. She sat up. Somewhere in the hall, footsteps echoed. She approached the window. Her fingers reached for the curtain cord. And stopped. Something moved outside. A long shadow, walking without footsteps, stopping at each window, lingering. Myra backed away slowly, remembering the decree. Never open your curtains after dark. The shadow stopped at her window and waited. She sat on her bed and didn't sleep, not even after the wind died. By morning, there were scratches on the glass. The hallway swallowed their footsteps as Ellis, Harper, and Zane crept deeper into the school. Their flashlights swept past broken lockers and half-drawn posters promoting dances that never happened. A silence hung in the air that felt too still, too deliberate, like the whole building was waiting for something. "What do you think happened here?" Harper whispered, her voice a brittle echo against the peeling paint. "Abandonment, neglect, same story everywhere," Zane replied, adjusting the camera strap digging into his neck. "Urban legends are always born in places like this." "No," Ellis stopped. "This is different. This place feels like it remembers." Zane raised a brow, but didn't argue. As they passed by an open classroom door, something shifted in the shadows. A faint squeak, like a chalk dragging a crossboard. Zane backpedaled to shine his light inside. There was nothing there. Only rows of rotting desks and a blackboard crusted with age. Until they saw it. On the blackboard, chalk, freshly drawn. Decree 1. Never enter room 109. Harper's breath hitched. That wasn't there before. Zane backed into the hallway. "None of us went in there yet. It's dusty," Ellis said, squinting. "But there aren't any footprints going up to the board." Zane kept the camera rolling as he turned to Harper. "Please tell me this is one of your setups." She shook her head, wide-eyed. They stood frozen, flashlights flicking in uncertain hands. Then came the sound. Bang. A locker at the far end of the hallway slammed shut, echoing like thunder through the corridor. They ran. Instinct took over until they rounded a corner and stumbled into what used to be the school's main office. The room looked frozen in time. Rotting file cabinets stood like rusting tombstones. One still held a phone off the hook, its receiver dangling like a noose. Papers, aged and crumbling, covered the floor in layers of forgotten bureaucracy. Zane lifted a yellowed folder from the floor. "Student disciplinary records," he muttered. He flipped it open. Inside were pages with names, dates, and offenses. Most common violation of the decrees. What the hell were the decrees? Harper asked, peering over his shoulder. Ellis grabbed another file. Same note. Violation of decree. Dozens of them. Then, in a locked drawer they forced open, they found something stranger. A handwritten list, sealed in a manila envelope, labeled simply, "Last known decrees." 7 rules, some crossed out, some smeared with what looked like blood, but the first remained untouched. Decree 1. Never enter room 109. Decree 2. Do not speak to the janitor after final bell. Decree 3. Do not run in the gymnasium. It hears speed. Decree 4. Sit when the bell rings, even if there's no teacher. Decree 5. If you hear morning announcements, cover your ears. Decree 6. Do not acknowledge the choir after sunset. Decree 7. You must not read this list aloud. Silence. Then Harper, without thinking, whispered, "Who makes rules like these?" Ellis snatched the list from her. "Don't read them. Not allowed." "Why?" She frowned. "Look at the last one." Zane rubbed his temples. "You know what this is. It's performance art. Local kids probably put this together to scare off trespassers." But even he didn't believe that. Ellis tucked the list into her jacket pocket. "Let's find room 109. See what this is all about." Zane looked at her, like she'd gone mad. "You want to do the one thing the rule says not to." "Exactly." The halls beyond the office were darker, colder. It felt like the school itself had exhaled. And now they were walking through its breath. They passed classrooms with shattered windows, desks flipped like there had been a riot. One room still had a slide projector running where the electricity came from. They couldn't say. It clicked softly in the distance, casting grainy black and white frames of faceless students on a cracked wall. "Nope," Harper muttered, pulling Ellis away before she could get too close. Then, at the end of a side corridor, they found it. Room 109. The plaque was half scorched. The wood around the frame blackened, like it had once caught fire. The door had been chained shut from the outside, with thick rusted links looped tightly through the handle and fastened with a padlock that looked older than any of them. Harper ran her fingers along the wood. Someone really didn't want this. Opened. Zane knelt, studying the lock, or someone inside really wanted out. Before anyone could respond, a noise drifted from behind the door. Faint, high, pitch. Children singing. Their flashlights flickered. Nope, Harper said again. Nope, nope, nope. But Ellis stepped forward. We're already in it. We've already broken the rule just by being near it, as if on cue. The padlock clicked. Just once. Not enough to open. Just enough to show it could. They backed away. Slowly. Then the hallway lights turned on, flickering to life. One by one. A wave heading toward them. The PA system crackled overhead. Good morning, students. The voice was dry, mechanical. Ellis screamed, dropping to her knees and covering her ears. Harper followed. Zane stood frozen. The voice continued. An unintelligible blur of syllables and static. Then silence. The lights blew out. Only the emergency red glow above the exit sign remained. And the chain on room 109 fell away. Just dropped. Like whatever was inside had been waiting for that precise moment. They ran. Back down the corridor. Through the office. Past the locker halls. But the school had shifted. Hallways doubled back. Rooms were missing. Doors that once led outside now opened. Into unfamiliar stairwells. Zane checked the camera. Still recording. This is insane, he whispered. We're stuck in some kind of loop. No, Ellis said, shaking. We're inside a rulebook now. A living one. Harper grabbed her shoulder. Then we follow the rules. All of them. Zane frowned. What? Seriously? We already broke one, she said. We can't afford another. The list in Ellis's pocket suddenly felt hot against her skin. She pulled it out. The rules had changed. Now there were only 6. Decree 1 was gone, burned out. The ink melted into ash. Beneath the empty spot, faint pencil scratchings formed a new one. New Decree 1. If the door opens, you must go in. They stared at it. Then at each other. Then back down the corridor, toward room 109, its door now ajar. Darkness yawning like a throat, waiting to swallow. Asterisk, the door stood open. Darkness rolled out of room 109 like fog, thick and swallowing. The beam from Zane's flashlight barely cut through it. The temperature dropped again. A low, vibrating hum buzzed in their ears, like a swarm of insects just out of reach. Ellis held the new decree list in trembling hands. It changed, she whispered again. The rule changed because we stood here. Harper's voice cracked. You think the rules know we're here? No, Ellis murmured. They know what we are. Intruders. Breakers. Zane turned to her. Then what happens if we don't follow the new decree? Behind them, the hallway groaned. SSSS lap. Something wet hit the tile floor, just beyond their line of sight. Ellis gritted her teeth. We go in. Harper grabbed her arm. We can still go back. Zane lifted his camera. No, we're not going back. Not until we understand what's happening here. We go in, together. And so they stepped over the threshold of room 109. Inside was not a classroom. Not anymore. It was bigger than it should have been. The dimensions stretched in unnatural ways. The walls curled upward into shadows, covered with moldy mural scenes of students sitting at desks, wide-eyed, mouths sewn shut. Desks were arranged in a perfect grid. Each one had a name tag on it, some with first names, others just initials. The chalkboard at the front of the room wasn't blank this time. New words had been scrawled there, in frantic strokes. Attendance is mandatory. Sit down. Stay quiet. Do not turn around. A bell rang. Not a distant chime like before. It came from right above them, an old-fashioned school bell, shrill and jarring. Instinctively, they sat at the desks, 3 of them. 3 desks in the front row bore their names. Zanny Harper. Alicia's stomach sank. This room had been waiting for them. Ellis whispered. Did anyone say our names when we came in? No, Harper said, eyes darting to the chalkboard. But it knows. They sat. They didn't speak. The bell stopped. The silence became oppressive. Zane's camera screen flickered. Then dash click. The door behind them shut. Click. It locked. A fourth desk behind them creaked. Someone had sat down. But they had all seen the rule. Do not turn around. Harper reached for Alice's hand beneath the desk. Zane stared straight ahead, teeth clenched, fists white-knuckled. Then came the breathing, shallow, rattling, almost mechanical. It wasn't behind them. It was above them. Alice's gaze slowly tilted up and froze. A shape clung to the ceiling like a spider. Long limbs with backward joints. Empty eye sockets that stared directly into her. Its skin was papery and pulsing, like old flesh stretched to tight. It was watching. Waiting. And then it began to speak. Its voice crawling down the walls like oil. 1. Must always obey. Zane's voice was barely audible. Is it ... taking roll? 2. Must not see. A scraping sound followed. Something heavy being dragged across the ceiling. 3. Will choose. The temperature dropped, so suddenly frost crept across their desks. The thing moved again, closer now. 4. Does not listen. The fourth desk behind them groaned violently. A soft thud. A low whimper. Then silence. Harper's nails dug into Alice's wrist. There's a fourth. 5. Must be replaced. A sound like wet tearing. Then nothing at all. When the bell rang again, everything stopped. The door creaked open. The thing on the ceiling skittered into the shadows. But the fourth desk was still occupied. And now they could look. They turned slowly. The figure sitting there was human mostly. A boy, maybe 15, maybe 17, but his face was wrong, melted, like it had been screaming for too long. He wore an old uniform. The school's crest barely visible. On his desk sat a paper, a test. Dated September 9th, 1992. Score, incomplete. A name scrawled across the top. Peter Malloy. Zane gasped. That's the name from the decree file. He violated Rule 2. Alice took a step toward the boy, but Harper yanked her back. The boy looked up. And spoke. His voice was bone dry and full of static. Don't let the choir see you. Then he dissolved, flesh cracking and vanishing like ash into the stale air. Only the paper remained. Zane picked it up, shaking. He never finished the test. No one finished anything here. Alice whispered. Harper backed toward the door. Let's get out of here. Now. Back in the hallway. The layout had changed again. But now, the air wasn't just still. It was listening. As they walked, more posters were visible on the walls. Some were faded. Others were new, shiny, glossy. Follow the decree. Be a good student. We are watching. Always. Failure to obey is grounds for detention. The last one was splashed in red ink or blood, and beneath it, someone had scratched out a single sentence. We were here before the teachers. Ellis touched the wall. This place. It's not haunted. Zane turned his camera on her. Then what is it? She turned slowly. It's a system. It lives off obedience. It needs it. As they rounded a corner, a loudspeaker crackled. 2. Life again. Attention students. The janitor is in the east wing. Do not engage. They froze. Decree 2. Do not speak to the janitor after final bell. Harper whispered. What time is it? They checked their phones. No signal. No time. Zane's camera displayed 12 a.m. dead center midnight. Final bell. Then they heard the dragging sound. Heavy boots, metal scraping along tile, and something whistling a schoolyard tune. Slow and off. Key. It was getting closer. Harper shook her head. Nope. We're not doing this again. They darted into the closest open room and slammed the door behind them. A classroom, dusty, cobwebbed, but empty. They held their breath. Outside. The footsteps paused. A silhouette passed by the frosted glass in the door. Massive. Bent. Dragging something. Behind him. Then came the voice. Low. Gurgling. Like someone trying to force speech through thick glue. Double quotes. Anyone. Need. Cleaning. Harper was near tears. Zane held his camera tight, barely breathing. The footsteps moved on. Then silence. 4 now. On the teacher's desk in the room, they found a small spiral notebook. It looked handwritten. The first page read, Peter's log. I broke the rules. They read, Peter had once been a student here. He'd found the decrees on his first day. He hadn't believed them. He spoke to the janitor. He ran in the gym. He turned during roll call. And the school had changed around him, piece by piece. The rules weren't punishments. They were rituals. Enforcements. Double quotes. Every broken decree awakens something new. The more that break them, the more they remember. And when they remember they feed. On the final page, a last desperate scrawl. I didn't finish the test. If you're reading this, sit when the bell rings, no matter what, or you'll take my desk next. Ellis closed the notebook. Harper pulled out the decree list. Now to have faded. The new decree 1 was gone. Decree 2, the janitor, was turning grey. It had been fulfilled. Zane lowered the camera. We're in the decrees now, living them, replacing old violations. Harper looked up. If we break more ... we become part of this place. Ellis nodded. That's the last decree. Zane frowned. There's 7. That's not the last. No, she said. Eyes haunted. The last is the one they don't write down. They left the room in silence. And found the hallway lined with lockers that hadn't been there before. Open. Every one of them. Inside each locker was a photo. Student portraits. Eyes scratched out. Below each one was a red stamp, expelled. And behind the last locker ... a mirror. Cracked. They saw themselves. And behind them, faint, but watching ... the shape on the ceiling. Smiling. We already broke one, she said. We can't afford another. The list in Ellis's pocket suddenly felt hot against her skin. She pulled it out. The rules had changed. Now there were only 6. Decree 1 was gone, burned out. The ink melted into ash. Beneath the empty spot, faint pencil scratchings formed a new one. New decree 1. If the door opens, you must go in. They stared at it. Then at each other. Then back down the corridor, toward room 109, its door now ajar. Darkness yawning like a throat, waiting to swallow. Asterisk. The door stood open. Darkness rolled out of room 109 like fog, thick and swallowing. The beam from Zane's flashlight barely cut through it. The temperature dropped again. A low, vibrating hum buzzed in their ears, like a swarm of insects just out of reach. Ellis held the new decree list in trembling hands. It changed. She whispered again. The rule changed because we stood here. Harper's voice cracked. You think the rules know we're here? No, Ellis murmured. They know what we are. Intruders. Breakers. Zane turned to her. Then what happens if we don't follow the new decree? Behind them, the hallway groaned. SSSS lap. Something wet hit the tile floor, just beyond their line of sight. Ellis gritted her teeth. We go in. Harper grabbed her arm. We can still go back. Zane lifted his camera. No, we're not going back. Not until we understand what's happening here. We go in, together. And so they stepped over the threshold of room 109. Inside was not a classroom. Not anymore. It was bigger than it should have been. The dimensions stretched in unnatural ways. The walls curled upward into shadows, covered with moldy mural scenes of students sitting at desks, wide-eyed, mouths sewn shut. Desks were arranged in a perfect grid. Each one had a name tag on it, some with first names, others just initials. The chalkboard at the front of the room wasn't blank this time. New words had been scrawled there, in frantic strokes. Attendance is mandatory. Sit down. Stay quiet. Do not turn around. A bell rang. Not a distant chime like before. It came from right above them, an old-fashioned school bell, shrill and jarring. Instinctively, they sat at the desks. 3 of them. 3 desks in the front row bore their names. Zanny Harper. Alicia's stomach sank. This room had been waiting for them. Ellis whispered. Did anyone say our names when we came in? No, Harper said, eyes darting to the chalkboard. But it knows. They sat. They didn't speak. The bell stopped. The silence became oppressive. Zane's camera screen flickered. Then dash click. The door behind them shut. Click. It locked. A fourth desk behind them creaked. Someone had sat down. But they had all seen the rule. Do not turn around. Harper reached for Ellis's hand beneath the desk. Zane stared straight ahead, teeth clenched, fists white-knuckled. Then came the breathing, shallow, rattling, almost mechanical. It wasn't behind them. It was above them. Ellis's gaze slowly tilted up and froze. A shape clung to the ceiling like a spider. Long limbs with backward joints. Empty eye sockets that stared directly into her. Its skin was papery and pulsing, like old flesh stretched to tight. It was watching. Waiting. And then it began to speak. Its voice crawling down the walls like oil. 1. Must always obey. Zane's voice was barely audible. Is it ... taking roll? 2. Must not see. A scraping sound followed. Something heavy being dragged across the ceiling. 3. Will choose. The temperature dropped, so suddenly frost crept across their desks. The thing moved again, closer now. 4. Does not listen. The fourth desk behind them groaned violently. A soft thud. A low whimper. Then silence. Harper's nails dug into Ellis's wrist. There's a fourth. 5. Must be replaced. A sound like wet tearing. Then nothing at all. When the bell rang again, everything stopped. The door creaked open. The thing on the ceiling skittered into the shadows, but the fourth desk was still occupied. And now they could look. They turned slowly. The figure sitting there was human mostly. A boy, maybe 15, maybe 17, but his face was wrong, melted, like it had been screaming for too long. He wore an old uniform, the school's crest barely visible. On his desk sat a paper, a test, dated September 9th, 1992. Score, incomplete. A name scrawled across the top, Peter Malloy. Zane gasped. That's the name from the decree file. He violated Rule 2. Ellis took a step toward the boy, but Harper yanked her back. The boy looked up. And spoke. His voice was bone-dry and full of static. Don't let the choir see you. Then he dissolved, flesh cracking and vanishing like ash into the stale air. Only the paper remained. Zane picked it up, shaking. He never finished the test. No one finished anything here. Ellis whispered. Harper backed toward the door. Let's get out of here. Now, back in the hallway. The layout had changed again. But now, the air wasn't just still. It was listening. As they walked, more posters were visible on the walls. Some were faded. Others were new, shiny, glossy. Follow the decree. Be a good student. We are watching. Always. Failure to obey is grounds for detention. The last one was splashed in red ink or blood, and beneath it, someone had scratched out a single sentence. We were here before the teachers. Ellis touched the wall. This place. It's not haunted. Zane turned his camera on her. Then what is it? She turned slowly. It's a system. It lives off obedience. It needs it. As they rounded a corner, a loudspeaker crackled. 2. Life again. Attention students. The janitor is in the east wing. Do not engage. They froze. Decree 2. Do not speak to the janitor after final bell. Harper whispered. What time is it? They checked their phones. No signal. No time. Zane's camera displayed 12 a.m. dead center midnight. Final bell. Then they heard the dragging sound. Heavy boots, metal scraping along tile, and something whistling a schoolyard tune. Slow and off. Key. It was getting closer. Harper shook her head. Nope, we're not doing this again. They darted into the closest open room and slammed the door behind them. A classroom, dusty, cobwebbed, but empty. They held their breath. Outside, the footsteps paused. A silhouette passed by the frosted glass in the door. Massive. Bent. Dragging something behind him. Then came the voice, low, gurgling, like someone trying to force speech through thick glue. Double quotes. Anyone. Need. Cleaning. Harper was near tears. Zane held his camera tight, barely breathing. The footsteps moved on Dot, then silence. 4 now. On the teacher's desk in the room. They found a small spiral notebook. It looked handwritten. The first page read, Peter's log. I broke the rules. They read, Peter had once been a student here. He'd found the decrees on his first day. He hadn't believed them. He spoke to the janitor. He ran in the gym. He turned during roll call. And the school had changed around him, piece by piece. The rules weren't punishments. They were rituals. Enforcements. Double quotes. Every broken decree awakens something new. The more that break them, the more they remember. And when they remember ... they feed. On the final page, a last desperate scrawl. I didn't finish the test. If you're reading this, sit when the bell rings, no matter what. Or you'll take my desk next. Ellis closed the notebook. Harper pulled out the decree list. Now to a faded. The new decree 1 was gone. Decree to the janitor was turning grey. It had been fulfilled. Zane lowered the camera. We're in the decrees now, living them. Replacing old violations. Harper looked up. If we break more, we become part of this place. Ellis nodded. That's the last decree. Zane frowned. There's 7. That's not the last. No, she said. Eyes haunted. The last is the one they don't write down. They left the room in silence. And found the hallway lined with lockers that hadn't been there before. Opened. Every one of them. Inside each locker was a photo. Student portraits. Eyes scratched out. Below each one was a red stamp. Expelled. And behind the last locker ... a mirror. Cracked. They saw themselves. And behind them, faint, but watching ... the shape on the ceiling. Smiling. Asterisk. They didn't speak as they moved past the mirror. Not even when the reflection blinked a second too late. Ellis kept her eyes forward, hands tight around Peter's notebook. Harper clutched the crumbling decree list. Zane scanned everything through the camera, whispering time codes and observations under his breath, like a nervous mantra. The hallway looped, now, like a figure 8. They passed the trophy case again, then again. But the trophies were different each time. Dusty one moment, gleaming the next. Then gone altogether. Are we stuck? Harper asked finally, unable to stand the silence. Ellis shook her head. No, it's guiding us. To what? Zane looked up as they turned the next corner. To them, the hallway ended in a sharp angle. A large wooden door stood at the far end. Its nameplate covered in black paint, but carved deep into the wood were words. CHO1RROOM. Keep your head down. Rule 3 from the decree list. Zane turned to the others. We follow it. Heads down. No matter what. Ellis nodded. They'll test us. The door creaked open as if expecting them. Inside was darkness, punctuated by flickering red exit signs that didn't seem to lead anywhere. And the music. Soft. Dissonant. Like children humming off key in an empty auditorium. They stepped in and the door shut hard behind them. The choir room was massive, too large to fit the dimensions of the school. Bleachers curved around the room in a complete circle, enclosing a stage made of black tile. Music stands were scattered, some still holding yellowed sheet music, and seated on the bleachers. Rows of students. Dozens of them. Motionless. Their heads all bowed. Hands clasped in their laps. Not breathing. Not alive. Harper whispered. Are they? Statues. Zane shook his head. No. Look at their throats. Ellis did. She regretted it instantly. Each throat pulsed with slow movement, something alive inside. Undulating. She jerked her gaze down. Keep your head down, she muttered. Don't look at their faces. They stepped forward. The tiles beneath their feet gave a soft echo. Like tapping on hollow bone. The choir hummed louder. Then the voice came. From everywhere at once. You were not invited. The students in the bleachers didn't move, but their humming stopped, and the silence hurt. Zane's camera twitched. The lens refused to focus on anything in front of them. The voice continued. You do not sing. You do not listen. Why have you entered the place of echo? Ellis's hands trembled. What do we say? Harper answered before she could think. We're looking for answers. The choir hissed in unison. Then ask no more questions. Suddenly, the music stands fell over, one by one, clattering like bones. Zane lowered the camera. We need to get out of here. The exit signs blinked dots, then shut off completely. A spotlight snapped on. Asterisk the hallway grew narrow after the choir room. The lights dimmed. Further, flickering every few seconds, like they were debating whether to stay on at all. The floors, once tiled, now felt soft under their feet like worn carpet, soaked in something that didn't quite dry. Zane paused near a plaque bolted into the wall. It read, "Faculty only. All others will be tested." Benefit, faintly scratched, into the wood. Do not drink the coffee. Rule 4. That's our next one, Ellis said. Harper, still pale from the choir room, whispered, "Peter wrote that, didn't he?" Zane nodded. And he died soon after. The door in front of them was plain oak, with a faded glass window painted over long ago. No sound came from behind it. Zane reached for the handle, and for a moment, the glass flickered with movement, an outline of a man leaning over something, whispering. Then it was gone. He opened the door. The teacher's lounge was not empty. Inside were 5 chairs around a low, circular table, all of them occupied. 5 teachers, still, silent. Eyes closed, hands around ceramic mugs that steamed, even though no heat filled the room. One of the teachers, an older man with a stained tie, raised his head as they entered. His eyes were missing. "Welcome, students," he said, smiling with cracked lips. "You're late for staff hour." Harper stepped back, but Ellis held her ground. "We're not staff," the old man chuckled, lifting his mug in toast. "You are now." The door slammed shut. Behind them, there was no other exit. Zane immediately began filming, stepping along the edge of the room. He caught every detail: the water-damaged ceiling, the strange blackboard scribbled with rules, like faculty must not intervene and reassign the burden. On the far wall, an ancient coffee maker gurgled to life. It began filling tiny, white mugs that hadn't been there a moment before. 6 mugs, one for each of them. 5 teachers, one open chair. And now, one guest. Harper looked down. They're trying to replace a teacher. Ellis stared at the mug in front of her. Steam twisted upward, carrying a sickly sweet aroma of burnt paper and cloves. "No one drink it," she said quickly. "Not a drop." The old man grinned. "You'll be thirsty. Very thirsty." Zane read Rule 4 aloud. "Do not drink the coffee." The other teachers began to stir. Asterisk each teacher raised their mug in unison, then sipped. Their hands moved like marionettes, jerky and unnatural. The old man gestured to the open seat. "The curriculum must continue. One of you must join." The lights flickered above, and for a brief moment, they saw something standing in the corner. Tall, thin. Its skin cracked like porcelain, glowing faintly within a heat. It had no eyes, only holes where its face should be, but its mouth smiled. Harper screamed. The thing blinked out of sight. The teachers didn't react. Zane whispered, "It's watching the staff." "Not us," Ellis said. "Then if we take the mug, it watches us." Harper looked at the steaming mugs. "What's in it?" The old man answered, "Responsibility." Zane moved to the chalkboard and began copying down the rules scrawled there. Every teacher had added a phrase. One line stood out. "Coffee must be served before knowledge can be passed." Ellis stepped toward the old man. "What happens if we refuse to drink?" He smiled. "Then the lesson never ends." Suddenly, the walls shifted. The door vanished. Bookshelves grew from the ceiling downward, defying gravity, lined with rotting textbooks. The air became dry and brittle, like old PAPERA chalkboard lowered from the ceiling, writing itself. "Today's lesson. Your regrets." Zane dropped his camera. On the board, writing appeared in dripping black ink. "Harper, your sister died because you left the gate open." Zane, you ignored Peter's last call. Ellis, you lied about the fire. They froze. The teachers smiled wider. The mug steamed harder. Asterisk, you want our guilt. Ellis whispered, "You want us to drink it?" The old man stood now. The bones in his arms cracked like dry twigs. "The coffee clears the mind," he said. "It burns regret. And then we pass it on." He lifted his mug and poured it onto his chest. The liquid hissed like acid. He didn't flinch. Zane whispered, "This is a cycle. They force guilt, then force relief, then make you a vessel for the next glass." Ellis turned to Harper. "Do you regret your sister?" Harper nodded slowly. "Every day." "Then don't give it to them." She picked up her mug and smashed it against the floor. The lights blew out. A scream erupted from the teachers, all 5 shrieking in layered, distorted voices. The room shook. Books fell upward into the ceiling. The coffee pot burst. The teachers collapsed into their chairs, lifeless, and the eyeless thing in the corner emerged fully. It towered over them. Its chest was a furnace full of mouths whispering all at once. But it did not attack. It looked at them. Then at the empty chair. And slowly it sat. Steam rose from its back. It had taken the job. The door reappeared. They ran. No one looked back. Not even when the bell rang behind them. Not even when the blackboard screamed, "Class dismissed." It hit the center of the room. A lone figure stood there now. A girl, no older than 12, pale, wearing a private school uniform, with a blood-red sash. She held a music book in one hand, and a pair of scissors in the other. "Welcome to recital," she said brightly. Her eyes were pitch black. "Someone must perform," she said. "All the choir will choose." The bleachers began to vibrate. Ellis whispered, "No one sing, no matter what." But Harper's mouth had already opened. She didn't mean to. It just came out one trembling note, barely audible. The girl on stage grinned. "Volunteer accepted." Harper clapped a hand over her mouth. The room changed. The tiles shifted beneath them, forming steps. Harper was lifted slowly, almost gently, onto the stage. Zane shouted and ran forward, but the tile between them cracked, splitting wide into a pit of ink. He stopped. Ellis lunged toward Harper. "Don't sing again." Harper stood there, lip trembling. The choir raised their heads slightly, not fully, just enough that Ellis could see dozens of mouths, sewn shut with musical wire. And yet, they were humming. The girl pointed to a new music stand beside Harper. Blank page of sheet music appeared. 5 black notes burned into it, as if from invisible ink. Zane read them aloud. "That's a progression in G minor." Ellis hissed, Don't interpret it." Harper shook her head, sweat pouring down her face. The girl smiled and moved closer. She held out the scissors. "Cut your tongue," she said sweetly, "or they'll use it." Harper froze. Behind her, the choir began humming again, louder, off-key, and terrible. The students in the seats began to sway, heads twitching. Ellis shouted, "Drop the scissors. Don't do either." Zane was recording, but his voice shook. "This is a ritual, a test. The choir feeds on performance sacrifice." Like Peter said, Harper made her choice. She turned the sheet music upside down. The ink bled off the page. The choir screamed. Not from mouths but from throats. Zane dropped the camera and covered his ears. Ellis screamed. Lights burst overhead. The girl on the stage tilted her head and vanished. Harper collapsed. Everything went dark. Then light returned. They were outside the choir room. The door behind them sealed shut with a heavy clang. Harper sat on the floor, shaking, blood trailing from her nose, but her voice was intact. Ellis knelt beside her. "You didn't sing." Harper nodded. Zane looked at the decree list. Rule 3, do not look at the choir, was gone now, faded. 3 rules gone, he whispered. 4 left. They walked in silence for a long time. After that, the school was breathing around them. The hallway lights flickered in time, with a pulse like a heartbeat deep under the building. Ellis stopped at a drinking fountain. There was water now. She leaned closer, then recoiled. The reflection in the fountain wasn't hers. It was the girl from the choir. Still holding the scissors, whispering something beneath the gurgle of the water. Ellis backed away. Harper said nothing. Her lips moved in silence. Zane spoke low. Every room fulfills a rule. Every room reveals something. We're next. Next what? Ellis asked. Zane looked up. We're next to teach. Asterisk in the hallway. Harper collapsed again. Her face was pale, but her eyes were clear. They made us teachers, she whispered. They wanted to keep us here. Zane nodded. We broke the ritual. It has to accept one of us ... or itself. Ellis checked the decree list. Rule 4 do not drink. The coffee had vanished. Only 3 remained. Zane looked at the next faint scrawl beneath the paper. It was almost illegible, but Harper read it aloud. Rule 5. Never enter room 12C after sunset. They all turned. At the end of the hallway was a door labeled 1 to C. Sunset Lecture Halland. The sun was already gone. The hallway ahead was dark as ink. Room 1 to C waited at the end like an open mouth, its brass number plate crooked, like it had tried to peel itself off and crawl away outside. The last sliver of orange sun dipped below the broken horizon. As the light vanished, a sound bloomed across the hallway. A low, vibrating hum, like 1,000 chalks dragged across a board all at once. Harper clutched her ears, and Ellis steadied her. That's the bell, Harper whispered. It's starting. Zane stared at the door. No turning back now. They stepped through. Together. 12C was not a classroom. It was an amphitheater. Dozens of rows spiraled downward, in a pit of carved stone. The walls pulsed with lines of glowing red script, ancient, unreadable, alive. At the center stood a single podium. Atop it, a book, a giant, leather-bound tome that oozed black fluid onto the marble stage. Behind it, seated on twisted wooden chairs that grew from the ground, were the students. Every one of them was still. Every one of them wore an old school uniform, and none of them had faces. Ellis choked on air. They single quotes read ... copies, Zane whispered, all failed students. As they descended the steps, a new voice spoke low, oily, and uninvited. Welcome, readers, it said from nowhere and everywhere. Your lesson is late. Ellis turned back toward the door, but it was no longer there, only a stone wall. You entered after sunset. The voice continued. You belong to the book now. The podium's tome flipped open by itself. The room dimmed, and the red lines on the walls moved, reshaping into language. Rule 5. Never enter room 1 to C after sunset. The lesson never ends. Harper gasped. It's going to trap us here. Unless we pass the class. Zane approached the podium carefully. The book flipped again. Question 1. What is the weight of memory? A pen floated up from the podium, dripping red ink. Zane reached out. The moment his fingers touched the pen, the air thickened. His breath slowed. His mouth filled with the taste of ash. And his mind was forced open. He saw himself, a child. In the woods with Peter, a small cave. Inside it, the bones of a fox, twisted. Wrong. Peter touched it. Zane screamed at him to stop, but it was too late. A wordless chant echoed, and Peter smiled, but not with his own smile. The memory broke apart like glass. Back in the lecture hall, Zane staggered back, dropping the pen. The faceless students turned their heads, every one of them. In unison, Ellis shouted, "It's testing your guilt. That's how it feeds." The book turned again. Question 2. How many regrets can a soul endure before it becomes hollow? Harper stepped forward. We don't have the answers, the voice laughed. Then become the answer. The floor cracked. From between the rows of seats, arms slithered upward, boneless, blackened, stretching toward them. Zane grabbed Harper and Ellis and dragged them up the rows. The faceless students stood, swaying side to side, mouthing words. Silently, no exit. Harper shouted, "There's no way out." Ellis pulled the decree from her jacket. The paper glowed faintly. Another rule faded, now only to remain. A new one emerged at the bottom, scrawled hastily, almost burning through the parchment. Rule 6. Light cancels the lesson. Bring flame to truth. Ellis looked at Zane. Do you have your torch? He fumbled in his backpack. Yes. a small butane torch used for melting wires and seals during his urban explorations. He lit it. The blue flame hissed to life. The entire room screamed. The walls recoiled from the light. The red script evaporated. In clouds of smoke. The faceless students howled, cracks forming across their blank faces. Ellis shouted, "To the podium! Burn the book!" Zane leapt forward, torch in hand. The book's pages turned rapidly, screaming, showing visions, Peter's body. The teacher's lounge twisting, the thing in the wall. Zane's own face, older, rotten, teaching a class of shadows. He pressed the flame to the book. It didn't burn. It hissed. It bled. And then it laughed. "You can't burn truth," the voice said. "But you can light the way." Harper stared at the torch. Then at the walls. "Not the book," she whispered. "The script." Zane turned the flame away and pointed it at the red lines again. They screamed. Melted. Dissolved into steam. As the script vanished, the room shifted. The rows of chairs crumbled. The faceless students burst into clouds of ash. The podium shattered. And behind it, a door. An actual door. They ran to it, flung it open, and found themselves back in the first hallway. Silence. No voice. No screaming students. Just the three of them, breathing hard. Harper looked at the decree again. Only one rule remained now. Zane, read it aloud. Rule 7. To leave. You must finish the final exam. No student leaves untested. Ellis took a shaky breath. Where is the exam given? They all turned. At the end of the hall stood a door that hadn't been there before. Large. Black. Stained with handprints. A sign hung crooked above it. Principal's office final evaluation. Clicked off his torch. Harper folded the decree. Ellis nodded slowly. "One more test," she said. "Then we end this." The door to the principal's office limbed like a coffin stood on end. It wasn't made of wood. It looked more like tightly compressed paper, layers upon layers of detention slips, demerits, torn report cards, and burned class photos, all fused together into a doorway that pulsed like flesh. No one wanted to touch it, but Harper did. With a breath she barely had the strength to take, she pressed her palm flat against the surface. The door felt warm. It opened inward, slow and silent. Beyond it, a wide, windowless chamber bathed in crimson light. Desks lined the edges, covered in old typewriters and rusted pencil sharpeners. The air smelled like wet chalk and old paper. At the far end of the room was a throne of broken desks and snapped rulers. And in that throne sat the principal. He wasn't a man. Or at least not anymore. A grey suit, perfectly pressed, skin like parchment, cracked and curling at the edges. His face was long, eyes sunken, with lips like dried glue. But the most terrifying part, he looked disappointed. "You're late," the principal said, his voice echoing from everywhere at once. "Class began 27 years ago." "Why did you wait?" Zane stepped forward. "We didn't know." "Ignorance is not a defense," the principal snapped. The room darkened. He stood. He was taller than any human should be, scraping the ceiling with his hunched frame. He raised one long hand. A book floated into the air. Between them. It flipped open. "The final evaluation consists of 3 parts," the principal said, "each based on your choices, your truths, and your failures." Harper whispered, "This is the last test. Double quotes. Part 1. Choices. Room shimmered, then vanished. They now stood in the school's gymnasium, but twisted. The bleachers rose endlessly into the sky. The basketball court was a mirror, and their reflections beneath it were wrong-aged, crying, melting. A bell rang. 3 doors appeared along the court. Above each door, a sign: "Stay and forget, run and deny, return and remember." Principal's voice followed. "Each of you must choose one. Only then will truth reveal itself." Zane looked at Ellis and Harper. None of them moved. Then Zane stepped to return and remember. Ellis followed. Harper hesitated, then chose run and deny. Zane's door opened into a hospital hallway. Dim, flickering lights. He recognized the place. It was the psychiatric ward where Peter had been sent after the cave incident. Except the hallway was longer than it should have been. At the far end, A door slowly opened. Zane approached. Inside the room Peter but not young, older, 30-something, hunched in a chair, rocking back and forth, whispering. Zane couldn't move. He listened. They made me drink it. From the stone mouth. I saw the school in the dark, Zane. The school was always there, waiting for us to grow old enough to come back. Peter looked up. And now you've brought them. Zane screamed. The room burned. Ellis stepped through return and remember, and found herself in her old childhood bedroom. But it was upside down. The furniture clung to the ceiling. The bed hovered mid-air, pinned to the mirror, the decree, with her handwriting. Except she had never written that last rule. Then the mirror cracked. A face stared back at her. Identical, but wearing a teacher's outfit. The mirrored Ellis spoke. You always wanted to teach here, didn't you? You wished for it. Ellis shook her head. Not like this. Wishes don't come free. The mirrored version hissed. You made the decree real. You gave it rules, and now it owns you. Ellis closed her eyes. Then I'll break the rules. She lit a match. Harper entered run and deny. She was back in her apartment. Safe. City skyline out the window. Music playing. Softly. She blinked. Confused. Then a knock at the door. She opened it. A man in a delivery uniform handed her an envelope. No face. Just the black void under a hat. She took the envelope. It read. You made the wrong choice. Stay asleep, or we'll come teach you again. She screamed. The room dissolved. All three were pulled back into the principal's office. They collapsed to the floor. The principal loomed over them, displeased. You chose poorly, he said. Now, Comey's part 2. Truth lights dimmed. The floor fell away. They plunged into darkness. Each landed in a desk, rows upon rows, stretching endlessly in every direction. Other students sat in silence, all faceless. Each desk had a paper. Test. Zane looked at his. Describe your greatest lie. His hands shook. He picked up the pencil and began to write. I told Peter I never wanted to see the cave again, but I did. I went back. I took something. A shard of the altar. It spoke to me. Zane dropped the pencil. Harper's paper. Read. Describe your greatest fear. She wrote. That it will follow me even if I leave. That it knows my name. That I already taught it how to live inside me. Ellis Page. Describe your greatest failure. I found the decree. I didn't burn it. I brought it to the school. I wanted to see what would happen. The principal's voice boomed again. You cannot be tested without pain. The tests caught fire in their hands. They screamed. And in the center of the classroom, a shape rose from the floor. A version of the school itself. Twisting. Breathing. Alive. You failed, the principal hissed. But we offer one more chance. Part 3. Sacrifice. If he were returned to the office. Now. A chalkboard stood behind the principal. On it, written in perfect script. One must stay. To may leave. A chair rose from the floor. A student's chair. Old, rusted, with shackles. The principal gestured. One of you must become the next teacher. Harper, Ellis, and Zane stared at each other. No one moved. Zane stepped forward. I'll do it. No. Harper shouted. Ellis grabbed his arm. You didn't bring this on us. Zane's eyes were hollow. I went back. I fed it. I kept its memory alive. He sat. The shackles closed. The principal nodded, satisfied. You've passed. There was a blinding flash. The decree burned in Ellis' hands, words vanishing. Only one line remained. The school keeps what it's owed. Zane looked at Harper and Ellis one last time. Tell Peter I'm sorry. Then the floor opened under his chair. He vanished. Harper and Ellis woke up outside the school. Morning. Sunlight. Cold dew. Silence. The school behind them was no longer visible, just mist and forest. Harper checked her pocket. Nothing. The decree was gone, but she could still hear it, a faint scratching on paper, somewhere far beneath the earth. And then she knew. Zane had taken the chair, but someone else would be called eventually. Zane didn't fall. He descended. Slowly, weightlessly, as though the school had accepted him into its foundations. His eyes were open, but there was no light, just pressure. like he was being rewritten from the inside out. Then, all at once he was sitting in the chair again. Only this time, the room around him had changed. The office was gone. Now, he was in a vast lecture hall made of crumbling brick and bone, each row filled with silhouettes, students with no eyes, teachers missing their mouths, all watching. And in front of him, on a stage crafted from warped blackboards, stood a woman with a red pen for a tongue. "Welcome to orientation," she rasped. Zane tried to stand, but the chair held him fast. "The woman, no," the trainer wrote in the air with her bleeding tongue. Every letter hung like smoke. Lesson 1. All teachers must teach. A piece of chalk appeared in Zane's hand. The blackboard behind him groaned and folded forward, becoming a wall in front of him. It was already half covered in arcane symbols, some mathematical, others like scars. He had to write something, but his mind was blank, until a memory surfaced. Peter. Alone in the hospital, whispering about the cave, about the decree. Zane raised the chalk. And wrote, "Never open a door if it's still breathing." The classroom shuddered. The students scribbled notes in blood. The trainer grinned. Zane passed lesson 1. He was allowed to stand. Lesson 2. She said. The walls dissolved. Now he stood in a hallway again, but not alone. There were students, but they weren't alive. They flickered like old footage, black and white, their outlines stuttering with each movement. One approached, a girl, about 12, eyes stitched shut. She held out a note. "If they ask what happened to Class 7B, lie." Zane took the paper, and then the students surrounded him, asking questions, demanding answers. "Where's the nurse's office? Why does the art room smell like teeth? Can I leave early? I've already died once." Zane choked. Sweat poured from his body. He answered the only way he could. "This is your school now. You stay until it forgets you ever left." They nodded. And vanished. Lesson 3. The trainer whispered, appearing beside him. Now they were in the attic. The place no one ever saw. Dust as thick as snow. The air hung heavy with mildew and regret. In the center, a cage. Inside, the old principal. Zane knew it instantly. It was the same man who once taught gym in the 90s, Principal Godfrey. But now, grey-skinned and shaking, muttering to himself. The trainer handed Zane a key. "You must feed the job," she said. Zane approached the cage. Godfrey looked up. His eyes were glass marbles, teeth long gone. "I stayed too long," he wheezed. "Didn't pass my burden. The decree kept growing, swallowed my name. Don't make my mistake. End it when it's your turn." Zane unlocked the cage. The old man vanished into smoke. The trainer nodded. "You have passed orientation." Zane was returned to the throne of desks and rulers, but it wasn't a throne anymore. It was a teacher's desk now. On it sat a thick book. The cover read, "Faculty Log." Zane opened it. The first page was blank. Then letters appeared, one by one. "You are now the custodian of the decree. Your first class arrives in 30 years. He looked up. The school was breathing again. The floorboards pulsed. The walls whispered. The bells rang with hollow hunger. Zane sat. He knew what he had become. And deep down, beneath the shame and the guilt, he felt something worse. Purpose. Far above. In the waking world, Harper and Ellis tried to move on, but sleep didn't come easy. Ellis burned what she thought was the final copy of the decree. Yet pages kept appearing in her notebook. She'd open it to find words she hadn't written. Harper began hearing school bells in her dreams. Sometimes, she'd see Zane in reflections, older, dressed in tweed, holding a ruler that dripped ink. The world tried to forget the school, but it could in single quotes because Zane was keeping it alive. And one day, the next class would begin. The notebook Harper left behind didn't burn. It curled. Yes, edges blackening, but the pages refused to catch. The decree was written on more than just paper. Now. It had roots. In the building. In the people who had entered. In Zane. 30 years later, the school should have been demolished. It had long been condemned. Boarded windows, rusted doors, a nitrogen monoxide trespassing sign that was more wish than command. But the school remained. like a scar on the town's map. And now, under cloudy skies, and the dying autumn wind, someone new walked toward it, a girl, 14, hood up, head down. Name, Maury Goss. She didn't want to be here. But the letter came anyway. Maury's home life had collapsed in one winter. Her parents were gone, disappeared under odd circumstances, and she had been bouncing between relatives ever since. Then one day, a sealed envelope appeared in her backpack. Enrollment approved. Report to room 3B. Harrowside Unified. Orientation, immediate. She tried to throw it away, tried to ignore it, but the next day, the same envelope appeared in her locker. This time with a postscript. You have already been absent. Don't make us come get you. Now, she stood before the old school. She didn't even remember walking here. The front door creaked open before she could knock. The scent hit first. Chalk and rot. Then the silence. And then a bell. Not digital, not even electric, just a heavy, mechanical clang that echoed like it belonged to a century ago. Maury stepped inside. The halls were empty, not dead empty. That strange kind of stillness that watches you back. Classroom doors lined the corridor like sealed mausoleums. Lockers were welded shut. The walls were covered in peeling paper, schedules, mottos, forgotten warnings. One read, failure to follow. The decree results in immediate instructional consequence. Another, late students will be eaten. Maury kept walking. She found room 3B. The door opened for her. Inside was a single desk. And behind it, a man. Old. Not ancient, but timeless. Grey in a way that had nothing to do with age. Eyes that had seen too much, a jacket patched with things that didn't belong to this world. Thread from shadows, buttons made of old bones. It was Zane. Now, the headmaster. Miss Goss, he said, smiling. You're early. She frowned. I don't want to be here. No one ever does. But here you are. She turned to leave, but the door had vanished. Now, only 4 walls and a single desk remained. Orientation. Then, he said, let's begin. Zane handed her a book. Not the decree. Not yet, just a journal. Tell me something, he said. What do you fear more, being forgotten or being remembered the wrong way? She stared at him. He nodded. The school feeds on truth, but it digests lies. And sometimes, if it's hungry enough, it rewrites. He turned to the board behind him. Words appeared, scrawled in perfect, ancient cursive. Lesson 1. You cannot leave until the school is full. What does that mean? Maury asked. Zane tapped the air. A map appeared, an aerial view of the school, only it looked alive. Its wings pulsed. Its walls breathed. Rooms flickered into view, then vanished. And at the bottom of the map, occupancy. 1 of 100. Maury sat down. The desk adjusted itself to fit her posture. Am I the only student? She asked. 4 now, and the others? Zane didn't answer. Instead, he handed her another envelope. Inside was a copy of the decree. But this one looked newer. Rewritten. Customized. 7 rules. One stood out, underlined 3 times. Do not try to escape during an assembly. She laughed. Why would I attend an assembly? Zane looked at her. Grave. Because when the whole school gathers, the school notices. And when it notices, it decides who's permanent. The light dimmed. Somewhere in the building, a typewriter clicked. The page in her book flipped by itself. Lesson 2. Every student has a role. Maury's desk began to change, shifting under her arms. It became a drawing table. Paintbrushes, ink pens, sculpting tools appeared around her. She blinked. I'm not an artist. Zane only smiled. The school thinks otherwise. It chose. The walls around her started to reshape. Blackboards unfolded into murals. Paintings she had never created emerged from the surfaces. Images that hurt to look at. Rooms she'd never seen. Monsters made of syllables. Screaming faces with no eyes. One was of her. Older. Holding a ruler. Maury stood up. I don't want this. Whatever it is, Zane sighed. You already agreed. When you open the envelope. She tore it up. but the pieces curled midair, stitched back together, and landed gently in her lap. Still sealed, still unopened. Even choices you don't remember making still count, he said. The bell rang again, and this time, it wasn't alone. Footsteps, dozens, maybe hundreds. Mori turned to the door. It had returned, and behind it, students, marching in, their faces blank, their uniforms stitched from shadows. They filled the seats, one by one. Zane gestured to her. Front of the class, you're the speaker today. I didn't prepare anything. You don't need to. The chalkboard turned to her, already filled. With a title, The Last Decree, as told by the next principal. Mori took the chalk. Her hand moved on its own. She began to write, each letter burned. The students watched. Zane stood behind her, silent. Somewhere, deep below the floor, the foundations shifted. A heartbeat pulsed through the building. Mori paused. One sentence remained. She could feel it. This one would decide everything. She took a breath and wrote, if you forget who you are, the school will remember for you. The bell rang. The walls smiled. The students clapped in perfect unison, and Mori knew. Her first day had ended. Outside, the real world turned 1 minute older, but inside the school, time thickened. The roster updated. Occupancy, 2 of 100, and behind the chalkboard, in a room no door could reach, the decree grew longer. Its final lines still unwritten. Asterisk. The school was alive. No. That was not quite right. It was awake, stirring from a long slumber. Its breath ragged, its heartbeat irregular, but steady. Mori could feel it beneath her feet, through the soreness of her shoes. The floorboards pulsed in rhythm with the echoing bells, and somewhere distant, the muffled sound of a typewriter struck keys relentlessly. She walked the halls, her footsteps swallowed by thick shadows that poured in corners and stretched long along the walls. Each classroom door was closed, each window sealed shut. Yet whispers drifted, soft, unintelligible voices that brushed past her ears like dry leaves. She paused at a door-marked gymnasium. It looked the same as any old school gym, but when she touched the handle, the metal burned her fingers. She recoiled. Behind the door, faint laughter, not children's laughter, something older. Mori moved on, descending stairs that never seemed to end. Each step took her deeper into the building's heart. At the bottom, a hallway lined with lockers stretched in both directions, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. There, she saw them, students, not alive, but not quite dead, ghosts. No, something else. They hovered just above the floor, transparent and flickering. One turned to look at her. Eyes hollow, but piercing. The students whispered in unison, the decree must be kept. The decree must be followed. The decree is law. Mori swallowed hard. Suddenly, the hallway shifted. Walls warped. Floor rippled like water. A voice, cold and distant, echoed, attendance is required. Mori's knees buckled, but before she could fall, a hand grabbed her shoulder. It was Zane. You're ready, he said quietly. Ready for what? He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Ready to face the assembly. Mori had heard the word before. The assembly was the school's final test, the moment when the entire building came alive in terrifying unity. It was the moment when the decree was enforced beyond mercy. As she followed Zane through the twisting corridors, the walls began to close in, and the whispers grew louder, until they became a roar. The gym door loomed ahead, glowing red. Inside, students filled the bleachers. Ghostly faces turned toward the entrance. Mori stepped inside. The heavy door slammed shut behind her. At the center of the gym stood the principal's podium. Zane climbed it and looked out over the assembly. The decree is law, he intoned. Mori felt the weight of every eye on her. The walls, vibrated. And then the decree appeared, hovering in the air like a glowing scroll. 7 rules, 7 laws. She was to enforce them. The gym lights flickered and dimmed. Shadows stretched from the corners to engulf the room. Suddenly, a figure emerged. Tall, thin, shrouded in tattered robes, its face hidden beneath a cracked mask. The school demands obedience, it whispered. "And you are the enforcer," Mori shivered. The assembly was watching. There was no turning back. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. Mori stood at the center of the gymnasium, heart hammering like a trapped bird desperate for flight. The shadows shifted around her, hungry, expectant. The robed figure, tall and unnervingly still, awaited her first command, or, more precisely, her first enforcement. The glowing scroll of the decree hovered between them, casting an eerie light across the faces of the spectral students packed into the bleachers, their eyes empty and unblinking, fixed unrelentingly on Mori, waiting for her to take up the mantle she never wanted. Zane's voice cut through the thick silence. "Every rule must be upheld. Every transgression noted. The school is relentless. Its law absolute." Mori swallowed hard, feeling the crushing weight of responsibility descend upon her like the walls themselves. The first rule hung in the air, written in flaming script. No student shall leave the school grounds without permission. She turned her gaze toward the ethereal crowd. Among them, a shadow flickered. A boy trying to slip away, his form dissolving and reforming with desperate attempts to escape. Mori pointed a trembling finger. "Stop." The boy froze mid-step, eyes wide with panic. The robed figure nodded solemnly. Mori felt an unseen force flow through her, a surge of authority she never knew she could wield. She raised her voice. "By the authority of the decree, you shall not leave." The boy's form quivered violently before solidifying again. A spectral hand emerged from the shadows and grasped him, pulling him back into the fold. Rule after rule, Mori enforced the school's ancient laws. Rule 2. All students must attend every class unless excused. A girl floated in the hallway, yawning and trying to skip the next lesson. Mori called out, "Return to your classroom." The girl vanished instantly, reappearing seated rigidly at her desk. The assembly grew restless, whispers rising like a tide. Each infraction Mori called out was met with a flicker of unrest. This was no ordinary school. This was a prison, a place where even ghosts were shackled to rules they could never break. And Mori was its reluctant warden. Then came Rule 5. No speaking of the outside world within the school walls. A spectral teacher tried to whisper about the real world beyond the gates. Mori's voice rang out. Silence. The teacher's form shattered into shards of chalk dust. The gym went deathly quiet. The robed figure stepped closer. "You carry a heavy burden," it said softly. Mori looked up. "Why me? Why am I chosen?" "Because the school needs a voice, a will, a conscience." She shook her head. "I don't want this, but it chose you regardless." Hours blurred into eternity as Mori enforced the decree, her strength waning, but her resolve hardening. At one point, a crack opened beneath the podium. From it rose whispers, fragments of students long forgotten, of names erased from history. Mori knelt, listening. The voices begged. Pleading. Double quotes, "Break the decree. Let us go." But Mori's hands shook as she tightened her grip on the chalk. She wrote the next command on the board, sealing the walls tighter. When dawn's first light finally bled through the stained glass windows, Mori was alone. The spectral students had vanished. The robed figure was gone, and the gym was silent. But Mori knew the school would wake again. The decree would demand enforcement, and she would be waiting. That night, Mori dreamed of the school's past, a history stained with broken promises, vanished children, and a power that grew darker with each new enforcer. She awoke with a start, the words of the decree echoing in her mind. The school keeps what it's owed, and Mori realized the school didn't just need an enforcer. It needed a sacrifice. Mori's days and nights became a ceaseless blur of whispers, rules, and shadows. The weight of the decree pressed down on her like a lead cloak. Every command etched into her soul with fiery insistence. Each time she enforced a rule, she felt a part of herself slip away, consumed by the ancient power that ruled the school. She tried to remember who she was before this nightmare, before the school claimed her, before she became its enforcer. The assembly returned. A more restless, more desperate crowd gathered in the gym. Faces appeared more human now, tinged with sorrow and anger. A boy stepped forward, eyes blazing. "I refuse to obey," he declared. The gym fell silent. Maury's heart pounded. This was the first open defiance she'd seen. The robed figure materialized beside her, whispering, "You must act now." Maury nodded, chalk in hand. The boy sneered, "Try to stop me." Maury took a breath, gripping the chalk tighter than ever. The room's air thickened, walls creaked. The decree glowed fiercely. She wrote in bold strokes on the board, "Defiance will be met with oblivion." The boy screamed as shadowy hands emerged from the floor, dragging him beneath the gym's cracked holes. His scream echoed in Maury's ears long after silence fell. The other students gasped, fear rippling through the assembly. Maury's hand shook, but she felt no relief. That she was becoming what she feared most, a jailer, a warden, a prisoner of rules. Days later, Maury wandered the hallways alone. The school was restless, its corridors twisting and darkening. She found herself in the basement. Walls lined with names. The names of students lost. Forgotten. Trapped. She traced one with trembling fingers. Zane M. Her breath caught. She realized the cycle she had stepped into. Zane, the man who trained her, was also a prisoner. Before she could move, the basement door slammed shut. In the darkness, whispers rose, echoes of past enforcers, voices filled with regret. Break the decree. End the cycle. Maury's resolve faltered, but the school's grip tightened. She felt cold hands clawing at her mind, filling her with doubt and despair. The next assembly was brutal. Students challenged her every command. The robed figure watched, expression unreadable. Maury knew the school was testing her limits, pushing her to break. To surrender, but she clenched her jaw, wrote rule after rule, enforced obedience, but inside, she was fracturing. One night, alone in the principal's office, Maury found the original decree. The pages yellowed and cracked, words scrawled in fading ink. At the bottom, a new line had appeared. The enforcer must become the sacrifice. Her hands trembled. The decree demanded her end. To sustain the school. To feed its hunger. Maury understood then. Her fate was sealed. The school would never let her go. She was to join the line of lost enforcers. To become a whisper in the walls. The final assembly approached. The gym packed tighter than ever. The robed figure now revealed its face, a mask shattered into fragments, a mirror reflecting Maury's own terrified eyes. She stepped to the podium. The decree burned brighter. Her last words were written in blood. The law is eternal. The school is endless. The shadows closed in. The bell tolled once more, and Maury's voice echoed, a whisper carried by the walls. You cannot escape. The gymnasium had never felt colder. The air was thick with the silence of the absent. Maury stood at the podium, her hands trembling over the chalkboard. The faces in the bleachers were no longer shadows or flickers. They were echoes, empty, shells of students who had once tried to break free, now trapped in the school's endless loop. The robed figure was gone. So was Zane. Only Maury remained, the final enforcer. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she looked down at the decree. It was no longer just words on paper. It was the school itself, a living, breathing entity that demanded sacrifice and obedience. The bell tolled once. Twice. A chorus of forgotten voices rose from the floorboards beneath her feet. They whispered, begged, cursed. End it, break the chain. Maury raised the chalk. For the first time, she wrote a rule of her own. One that had never been written. One that was forbidden. The school must die. The moment the words appeared, the gym shook. Walls cracked, beams groaned. Light burst through the stained glass windows, bathing the room in fractured color. The shadows writhed and screamed. The floor beneath Maury cracked open. From the fissure rose the monstrous heart of the school, a pulsating mass of shadows, ink, and broken memories. It surged toward her, but Maury stood firm. She repeated the words. The decree writhed, burning away, one by one. The spectral students dissolved into light. The robed figure appeared, now unmasked. The faces of all the lost enforcers merged into one. They reached out, not to harm, but to thank Dr. Free. With a final scream, the school began to collapse inward. Walls folded. Rooms crumbled. The bell tolled no more. Murray felt herself being pulled upward, out of the darkness, out of the nightmare. She woke on a field outside the school. The sun was rising, birds sang, the building was gone. Only a cracked foundation remained, swallowed by grass. Murray walked away. She carried the last page of the decree. Blank. Waiting. For a new beginning. The school was dead, but the story was not over, because somewhere, in the silence, a new whisper began. The decree never truly dies. End of the abandoned school's last decree.